One match. That's all that stands between Brazil and the abyss. The five-time world champions, the country that gave football its rhythm, its poetry, its yellow and green religion, are walking into a knockout tie where a single mistake ends everything. And this is something the football world has not seen in a generation. Brazil, genuinely, publicly, undeniably scared. FIFA's worst nightmare is not a small nation crashing out early. FIFA's worst nightmare is Brazil crashing out early. And if you think the tension you are seeing on the pitch is the whole story, you have no idea what has been building behind that dressing room door for months. Let me set the scene. Because the noise around this Brazil side is unlike anything we have heard since 2014. The stadium is packed. The yellow shirts are everywhere. The samba drums are going. On the surface, it looks like every other Brazil knockout night the sport has ever produced. Confident nation, terrified opponent, television cameras hunting for that one iconic close-up of a Brazilian number 10 doing something impossible. But look closer. Look at the faces on the bench. Look at the touchline. Look at the manager pacing like a man who already knows what the headlines will say if this goes wrong. Because for the first time in a very, very long time, Brazil are not the favorites in their own story. They are the ones being hunted. And the human anchor of this entire drama is a manager who was hired to restore the swagger, to restore the identity, to restore the fear that opponents used to feel the moment they saw that yellow shirt jog out of the tunnel. Instead, he inherited a side full of doubt, a federation full of politics, and a country that has run out of patience. He said, and I am quoting him from the pre-match press conference, "We are not here to survive. We are here to win." Brazil does not participate. Brazil competes. Strong words. Beautiful words. He had no idea how quickly those words were going to be tested. Now on the surface, this looks like a routine knockout tie. Brazil have talent. Brazil have depth. Brazil have history. But the second you look behind the curtain, the picture completely changes. Because the real story here is not about one match. The real story is that Brazilian football has been quietly rotting from the inside for the better part of a decade, and this tournament is the moment the rot finally becomes impossible to hide. Start with the results. Because the numbers do not lie, and the numbers are ugly. Since 2022, Brazil have gone through 4 different head coaches. 4. In a nation that used to treat its manager like a president, they have been changing them like shirts. In the qualifiers, Brazil suffered their first ever home defeat in a World Cup qualifying match in their entire history. Read that carefully because it is extraordinary. The country that invented modern attacking football lost a qualifier on home soil for the first time ever. That is not a slump. That is a structural collapse. And then there is the detail that really tells you how far gone this was. In the last 18 months, Brazil have scored fewer goals in competitive fixtures than at any comparable stretch since the 1990s. The team that produced Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Romario, Rivaldo, an entire alphabet of number 10s, has become a side that struggles to break down mid-block defenses. When your identity is attack, and you cannot attack, you do not have an identity anymore. Now stack the dressing room reports on top of that. Because multiple sources inside the camp have described the atmosphere as, and I am quoting directly, fractured. Senior players openly questioning tactics. Younger players unsure of their roles. A federation, the CBF, that has been dragged through court cases, presidential disputes, and internal power struggles that have leaked straight into the national team setup. When your governing body is fighting itself in public, your players feel it in private. Think about that for a second. The most decorated national team in the history of the sport walking into a World Cup knockout tie, and the biggest question is not tactical. It is psychological. Can they hold their nerve? Can they trust each other? Can they trust the man on the touchline? Because when your own federation president has been in and out of the headlines for the wrong reasons, and your own players have been quoted in the local press expressing doubts, the wall of belief that Brazil sides used to walk out with, that wall has cracks in it. Brick after brick after brick, this side has been losing the aura that made opponents flinch before kickoff. And here is where it gets worse. Because in the group stage, the warning signs were flashing in neon. Brazil looked tentative in their opener. They looked disjointed in their second match. They scraped through with a performance that on any objective analysis would have been described as mediocre if it had come from any other nation. But because it is Brazil, the world gave them the benefit of the doubt. The world always gives Brazil the benefit of the doubt, until it does not. And that brings us to tonight. Because tonight, the benefit of the doubt runs out. Tonight, the opponent is not intimidated by the yellow shirt. Tonight, the opponent has watched the tape, seen the cracks, and arrived with a game plan built specifically around the idea that this Brazil is not the Brazil of 2002. This Brazil can be pressed. This Brazil can be rattled. This Brazil can be beaten. Let me put this into historical context, because it matters. In the entire history of the World Cup, Brazil have only been eliminated before the semi-final on 4 occasions in the modern era: 1966, 1990, 2006, 2010, and then, in a run that will haunt an entire generation, 2018 and 2022, both at the quarter-final stage. That is the pattern. That is the trajectory. A team that used to be a lock for the last 4, now averaging exits at the last 8. And if they go out tonight at the round of 16, before even reaching that quarter-final wall, it becomes the earliest Brazilian exit at a World Cup in over 30 years. 30 years. Sit with that number for a moment. Because 30 years is not a slump. 30 years is a generational failure. It would mean an entire cohort of Brazilian footballers, from the ones playing tonight to the ones watching from home dreaming of the yellow shirt, would grow up in a country whose national team is no longer defined by winning. It is defined by fear. Fear of the next collapse. Fear of the next 7-1. Fear of becoming a footnote in a tournament they used to own. And the man carrying all of that weight? He is standing on the touchline right now, arms folded, jaw locked, trying to look like a manager who has answers. But behind that stare is a coach who knows exactly what happens next if Brazil lose. He does not get a farewell tour. He does not get a press conference thanking him for his service. He gets the same treatment every Brazil manager gets when they fall short. He gets erased. The federation moves on, the country moves on, and the search begins for the next savior, who will inherit the same broken structure and be asked to fix it in 18 months. So what happens now? Because if Brazil win tonight, the noise quiets down. Temporarily, they walk into a quarter-final against a European side that will fancy their chances, and the pressure only doubles. If they win that, they face a semi-final in a tournament format that has already produced more upsets than any World Cup in recent memory. The road does not get easier. It gets steeper. Every match from here is a match where one moment, one deflection, one refereeing decision ends the dream. And if they lose tonight, the consequences do not stop at the manager's office. The federation will be forced into another restructure. Sponsors will start asking questions. The domestic league, already struggling to keep its best young players from being bought by European clubs at 17, will lose even more leverage. Brazilian football, as a global brand, takes a hit it has not taken since that night in Belo Horizonte in 2014. Let me be fair for a second, because this channel does not deal in fantasy. It is entirely possible Brazil walk out tonight, click into form, and remind the world exactly why they are the most successful nation in World Cup history. They still have some of the most gifted attacking players on the planet. They still have match winners who can produce a moment out of nothing. One flash of brilliance, one long-range strike, one set-piece header, and suddenly the narrative flips and everyone forgets the doubts. But that is exactly what makes it a nightmare instead of a footnote. Because Brazil are no longer a team that dominates. They are a team that survives. And survival is not what the yellow shirt was built for. Brazil were never supposed to be underdogs. Brazil were never supposed to be the story of nervous energy and fragile confidence. Brazil were supposed to be the story of joy, of Jogo Bonito, of the samba rhythm that made defenders look like they were dancing with ghosts. Instead, they are walking out tonight carrying the weight of every failure since 2014 stacked on their shoulders. Brick after brick after brick. And when you have spent a decade as the team that keeps falling short, you do not get to suddenly play the role of the confident champion. One match. One match to reset the narrative. One match to remind the world One match to prove that the yellow shirt still means what it used to mean. Or one match to confirm what a lot of people have been quietly whispering for years now. That the era of Brazilian dominance is not paused. It is over. Now. I want to hear from you. Because this one splits opinion right down the middle. Do you think Brazil find another level tonight, walk through this knockout tie, and go on to lift the trophy the way their history demands? Or do you think this is the tournament where the mask finally comes off, where a broken federation and a fractured dressing room finally catches up with them, and Brazil crash out earlier than anyone dared predict? Drop your verdict in the comments. I read every single one, and this is the kind of debate this channel was built for. Hit subscribe, because we are deep into this World Cup and it is already eating giants alive, and trust me, whatever happens tonight, this will not be the last one. There are more stories, more collapses, more scandals and more twists coming, and you do not want to miss what happens next. One match, one shirt, one country holding its breath. I'll see you in the next one.